Hello everyone, ESPN FC live on a Saturday immediately following Manchester City 3, Chelsea 1. Mark Donaldson, Luis Miguel, Echegaray. And after that first 10 minutes at the Etihad, I thought this was going to be a 3-hour recap because quite a lot actually happened. And there were so many different narratives that I thought, right, I'll ask about that. Okay, I have to ask about that. Well, that happened and I have to ask about that. So it was quite the game. I thought City deserved the victory, but they couldn't have got off to a worst possible start, LME.
Yes, correct. Obviously, Pep Guardiola gambled, and as we were talking in the show on Friday about his 3 new signings, who he was going to start or even feature in this game, and he surprised us, at least the majority of us, by going with Omar Marmoush from the get-go, and of course the Uzbekistan defender Kusanov, the 20-year-old who comes from Lens, and obviously he made a horrific decision, and I know you're going to ask me this, and it was the fault of Kusanov to accidentally head it back to Ederson. Nico Jackson steals the ball, gives it to Noni Madueke, but this is Pep Guardiola to blame because I think that you're putting this young man in a very difficult situation. Let's begin with the fact that he's only had 2 training sessions. One of them included the PSG warm-up. He doesn't speak any English as of yet, so communicating with the team and the squad is difficult in itself. And then you're asking him to start in this very, very difficult game against the Chelsea side, who at least in the very first moments of the match are going to go at you. So I think it was a terrible error by Kusanov, who also got the yellow card as well. But the other 53 minutes, I thought he played pretty well. But I blame it all on Pep Guardiola in this situation. I mean, you have to be almost arrogant to put him in that scheme. And Chelsea got the lead with 1-0.
Yeah, just as your voice runs out, there's 3 words in your background. You've got Villa, you've got football, and you've got Messi. And it was Messi. That was the beginning of the game for Kusanov. Now, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, he then puts a challenge in on Cole Palmer, and then he gives it away again. But all credit to him for picking himself up, because I don't know, only Pep Guardiola can answer this, and it's worth keeping tabs on ESPN FC and Pep's post-game press conference to see if he was asked, did you think, look, I need to take him out the firing line here? But he stuck with them, and he got better, because you felt for him to begin with. You also thought that Chelsea, when you go to the Etihad and you've scored the early goal, one's never likely to be enough. They had other chances in that first half before City got the equaliser, and it was their own fault that they weren't more than 1 goal up, whether it was defensive mistakes or their own poor finishing. Palmer was one-on-one with Jackson in support, and he gave him a horrible ball. So this game for me is all about Chelsea and what they might have done and the mistakes that they gave Manchester City, because City are one of the best teams in the country, and they're going to punish you.
Yeah, and not only that, I think at halftime, Enzo Maresca was ruining the very point that you're making. But also, after City went 2-1 up, they became even more defeatist, I think. They were more reactive to what Manchester City was doing. During this match, I was getting a lot of WhatsApp messages from a few of my friends, the majority, sadly, being Chelsea fans. They can be annoying for 364 days of the week. But today, they made a good point, which is, Cole Palmer is clearly their jewel. There's no doubt about it. He's a wonderful, talented player who's done so much for Chelsea since arriving from Manchester City. But in big games, he disappears a little bit, or at least he makes bad decisions. It happened against Arsenal. It happened against Liverpool, and it happened today. I think part of it is Mateo Kovacic and the likes did a pretty good job in trying to make it difficult for him. But you brought that very good point that his decision-making in specific moments when Chelsea could have done something out of it, he didn't. Now, I'm not putting the full blame here on Cole Palmer. It's just a good example on what Chelsea set as a blueprint today. I think they were defeatist and too reactive, especially when Manchester City went 2-1 up. But full credit to Man City. They deserve to win 6 matches now in the Premier League without losing. They're 4th now, overtaking Chelsea. But I think that Enzo Maresca is going to look at this tape and go, we're not in any major European competition. We are pretty young and a big squad. I think everybody knows it. I think that we really, bleeped the bed here. We could have done way more at the Etihad.
100% they could. And we take a look at the equalising goal for Josko Gvardiol. And he's followed up and he's in the right place at the right time. But let's rewind it a little bit. Now, earlier today, I was commentating on Atletico Madrid against Villarreal. And Atleti had a back 4, but it became a back 5, when they were defending, because Giuliano, who was playing right midfield or an advanced right side, basically became an auxiliary right back. Long story short, that's what Noni Madueke was doing. And while the rest of the four have got their good line, there's Madueke, oh dear, 3-4 yards further back. He is playing everybody on side. And I thought, okay, is that something they're going to do quite a lot of, Chelsea? And they did. They did it in the second half as well. It was mainly Madueke trying to close down Josko Gvardiol, who was getting forward from the left side. It's great if it works, but you're asking a very talented forward to try and defend and keep in tabs with the other defenders. That's not good enough. That was mistake one from Chelsea. How do you stop that from happening? Because Madueke should not have been as far back as he was.
No, and again, I think the blame here goes on Maresca and what he was seeing here. Obviously, Madueke's initial instincts are to be much more of a dangerous player going forward, hence his opening goal, running towards the goal. But to your point, I think that's something that Man City did very well today. And by the way, even though he didn't score, Omar Marmoush takes a lot of credit for this. He's going to give a new angle to Manchester City, because Man City, obviously, under Pep Guardiola, are the team that like to build, right? They build towards the final third. They wait to see what happens forward. When Erling Haaland's scoring, when Phil Foden's doing his thing, it becomes easier. But now Marmoush is running under those lines and creating this anticipatory runs. Nunes did exactly the same thing, which is the point about Gvardiol's goal. And Gvardiol, I thought, had a great game today. He did everything that you asked of him going forward. And there were a few chances that he missed prior to him, putting it at the back of the net after Nunes' attempt, or at least Nunes making that opportunity for him. And I think Chelsea just kept, overindulging themselves in the same problem. It was the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And Chelsea didn't react enough, or at least they were too passive in its reaction. And Gvardiol was a great example. This was a good example of Manchester City, after equalizing. And by the way, obviously, Erling Haaland's goal, which was a massive Robert Sanchez mistake coming off his line, just inviting Haaland to do it. But this was a really good example of Man City doing what they do best, which is identify the weaknesses of the opponent and then just go at you. And that's what happened today, especially in that second half.
68th minute. Ball's played over the top from left to right. The goalkeeper, he comes and then he thinks, I shouldn't have come. So he's got a choice. He stays where he is or he goes back. He decides to stay where he is. He's now lost. Now, for as much as we've enjoyed praising Chelsea, and I think they've thoroughly deserved the praise that they've got, ultimately, they've got 5 goalkeepers. Well, they've got more than that, but the 5 kind of in the first team squad that they have. They've got Sanchez, they've got Jurgensen, who they signed from Villarreal, they've got Bettinelli, they've got Bergstrom, and they've got Beach, obviously a couple of youngsters in there. So while we praise them for doing good things, if they want to seriously challenge to be top 4 and maybe even better than that and potentially challenging for silverware, why have they got Robert Sanchez in goal? Now, this isn't a one mistake a season and, okay, well, that happens. You don't have to go back too far to find another mistake by Robert Sanchez. If he's the best that Chelsea think is good enough to be their number 1, is there a bigger problem here?
Possibly, because it's obviously talking about the overall strategy of Chelsea. We know what they've been doing in the transfer window in the past few summers, just trying to get that young generational talent from the outfield side. But we've had this conversation before, Andy, you and I, about, especially at the beginning of the season, which was basically asking the question, look, Enzo Maresca is a very good manager. There's a lot of talent here. Clearly, Cole Palmer leads the way in terms of, the focal points. But where are the issues for Chelsea? And when you look at earlier matches and throughout the scope of the season, because I think you have to go, they've only had like a couple or 3 clean sheets in the last 4 months. Part of it is defensively and defensive woes. But again, if you want to develop and continue and try to be a top 2, top 3, and even at some point in the future be a Premier League title contender, you need a world-class goalkeeper. Robert Sanchez is a very good goalkeeper. He's not world-class. And the issues before were passing from the back and identifying what he was trying to do when he was trying to alleviate pressure. It wasn't working out. There were many examples in this season so far about him giving the ball away, making bad decisions. And today, coming off your line like that was just a horrific, tragic mistake, because number 1, you're just inviting Haaland to do the business and not actually putting your trust on your defender. So again, I think that's a big problem that they're going to have to look at. I don't take anything away from Sanchez as a keeper, but he's not world class, and that's going to be a dent for Chelsea if they want to win the Premier League, Champions League, etc. in the future.
By the way, Erling Haaland has made that look very easy.
Yeah, very good finish.
It wasn't. You've got to get it up and over a goalkeeper. You've got to get it down.
Hey.
And he's produced a very good finish. And
Ederson assists too. He's the highest assist goalkeeper alongside Paul Robinson, apparently. Wow, yeah. Not bad, huh?
And that puts City 2-1 up. But something you were saying earlier about when Chelsea in the cold light of day look back at this game, Manchester City are an excellent side. They don't need gifts. And they got two. They got one from Madueke for the opening goal because he played everybody onside. And then they got one from Robert Sanchez. Now, look, Manchester City had many other chances. And they got the goal. They got the third goal through Phil Foden. And I think for this one, for any kind of youngsters watching this who watched that as well, there's a reason he's looked behind, he's looked to the side, he's just seeing if he's got the best option. Because we'll get onto Marmoush over the piece very shortly, but there was one instance where Marmoush goes for the shot from just at the edge of the box. If he lays in Phil Foden, who's going to be onside, then Foden's got a far better opportunity. So Phil Foden's aware of everything that's around him. He's aware where the nearest defender is. He's aware how quick he needs to be and how much he can slow down. And he's finished with aplomb. So there's a 2-goal deficit in the final score. Does that sum up what we saw at the Etihad today? Were City 2 goals better than Chelsea?
Yes, I think so. I think it's a deserved result and a deserved win from Manchester City. And I think to your point, it's not just 100% because of what Man City did, but also because of what Chelsea allowed them to do. Look, throughout the whole season, and we stick by it, we have to give a lot of credit to Enzo Maresca and what he's done in his first season. But to me, the issue today, and actually because they won against Wolves, but before that, they were really struggling for victories as well. What's alarming right now is that you don't have a congested schedule, Chelsea Football Club. This isn't asking you to play a Man City on a weekend and then in a few days try and stay in the Champions League. You have a very large squad, the biggest in the Premier League. It's very young. You have a lot of talented players. Yes, there's injuries, but everybody's dealing with them. And you can't really be allowed to have this kind of performance against the Manchester City side, who, by the way, as you said, are not firing on all cylinders. A few days ago, they just suffered a remontada from PSG. We've seen the vulnerabilities, right? We know that they're getting better a little bit in the last 6 matches in the Premier League, but they're still out there to be gotten. And Chelsea, you have to do better. And I think that Maresca is going to look at this tape and think to himself, you know what? We should have tried to go at them instead of trying to be reactive. Okay, we're at the Etihad. Okay, they have them new signings, but especially we opened the scoring here. We're 1-0 up. Why are we sitting back? Why are we being a little passive? Why are we allowing Manchester City to take control? Let's keep going. And I don't think they did that today. And it's going to be an issue now because when you look at the table and you look at all the teams that are pushing for European positions, Bournemouth under Andoni Iraola, of course, Newcastle United and Alexander Isak, who keep winning. Villa play West Ham tomorrow, an ailed West Ham. Arsenal got a win despite the issues. There's a lot of teams there that are fighting for Europe, and Chelsea better be careful because they really need to reclaim their identity. Otherwise, they're either going to stay where they are or maybe even go lower.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their next fixtures for Chelsea. Home to West Ham, then an FA Cup tie at Brighton, then Brighton again away from home in the Premier League, Villa away, Southampton at home, Leicester at home before they face Arsenal and Spurs. It's all right. It's not a bad run of games. There's a couple of toughies in there. But the bottom line is that this isn't a kick Chelsea because they're down and they've been beaten 3-1. That was an opportunity today. They took the lead. They sat back a little. They gave Manchester City 2 absolute gifts. And yeah, they were well beaten in the end, but it's how they move on from that. Now, I want to end with Manchester City. I want to talk about Marmoush, who we weren't sure if he was going to start. He did. Thought he was excellent. Kushanov recovered, let's just say, after a very shaky start. Didn't get until the hour mark, was replaced by John Stones. So, look, these are long-term projects as far as they're not going to be at City just for the next year or two. With Marmoush, that's exciting. He's a player. He's a goal scorer. He'll be fun. And I think Erling Haaland and Phil Foden are going to enjoy playing alongside him.
Yeah.
For Kushanov, when everybody's fit, look, it might be learned from some players. Right now, he was thrown in. What did you make of the two players making their home debuts today?
Well, Omar Marmoush, as you said, is just, and we talked about it already, he's just so good. And, you know, you think about Egypt as a national team, and you got Salah on one side, Marmoush on the other. That's pretty remarkable, but he was wonderful. And I think that what he's going to give City, as I mentioned earlier, is another, you know, dynamic angle here. He, throughout this entire game, he was, first of all, he was so aggressive and up for it. And I don't think it's just because it was his debut. I think when you look at the games that he played with Eintracht Frankfurt and the kind of player that he is, this is what he's going to give you all the time. That aggression, velocity, running behind the line. He's just waiting. There was a few scenarios where he didn't get the ball, and I feel like if he could have gotten it, he probably would have scored or at least come very close. He's waiting for that last second to just outpace you, which he can do. And now you can see what he can do. We were all asking on Friday, where's he going to play if he plays? And I thought, well, the left side's really overpopulated, but there he put them, Pep Guardiola. He put him on that left side, Phil Foden on the other one, Erling Haaland right there next to him. And I think that he's going to give another angle. He's just a great player. It's great to see him in the Premier League. And look, we talked about Christian Novak, again, 20 years old, and he made a horrible mistake. He got that yellow card. Only Jonathan Woodgate at Real Madrid. You remember that? MD, when he got that own goal and he got sent off, I think. Only he can do a worse kind of debut as a centre-back. But he's 20 years old. He doesn't speak English. He's had 2 training sessions. Okay, he made a horrible mistake. But for the majority of the other minutes, he actually played really well. Almost 90% of his passes completed. There was one scenario where he was competing. I think it was Moises Caicedo, or maybe it was Nico Jackson, and he just beat him to the ball so easily. So there's a project there. And you said it. This is about the future. And we haven't even talked about Victor Reis, and I won't get into it, but he's a future Brazil captain. So, Man City, to me, have, some really good players for now and the future, especially Marmoush. Ooh, he's going to be great.
So City are 4th. 41 points, Nottingham Forest above them, 44, then Arsenal with 47, and Liverpool 53. Where's City ending up this season? Which position? I
mean, they have a chance for a Champions League spot. I think the title is just too far away for them. Obviously, I know it was just Ipswich Town, but Liverpool dominated that, and they, Ipswich scored at the end, but they control that game. This is Liverpool's title to lose. Arsenal needed that victory in order to stay in the hunt. I think the dent was just too big from what happened during that terrible period with Manchester City for them to win the title. I think for them to be in the Champions League fight is good enough, especially this season. When you look at this table, it's so competitive, So I think that's what Pep Guardiola is thinking, game by game, try and stay in this Champions League competition. But I think the title is too much for them. A top 4 spot after everything they have gone through this season should be good enough.
Yeah, and top 5 is likely to be good enough as well for the Champions League. Well, it was a test of character today for Manchester City. 2 goals up in midweek away to Paris Saint-Germain, then conceded 4 without reply. How would they react? This was a test today. They had a little help from their friends and came through and won it by 3 goals to 1. Bye for now.